Welcome into the Five Guys here in the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick. And at Five Reasons Sports, I got Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. Before we get to today's topic, I want to tell you about our great lead sponsor here on the Five Guys. It's our friends over at Jersey's 305.
Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the Five Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with Five Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection.
All right, back here on the Five Guys. We're going to talk Heat again. Why not? Couple of other updates. Yeah, a couple of updates on other South Florida teams, just because we're going to try to do that here on the show and handle a little bit of everything as we go forward on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Panthers news, Aaron Ekblad out for the rest of the regular season, expected to be back for the playoffs. Panthers have been struggling a bit. Not going to catch the Rangers now, but got to try to stay ahead of Boston if possible. The Marlins 0-7. The good news is they go on the road. Nobody got Burger King. People were supposed to get Whoppers after wins.
Crazy.
Nobody got Burger King.
Yeah, and
Right?
either the Marlins are so bad. You know, I've got a buddy of mine I haven't seen in years. I went to high school with him. He lives in Boston now, but he still supports the South Florida teams. He's not been converted to any of the Boston teams, and he's going to be coming. He's going to be coming to town next week, and like he wanted to know if I can go to the Marlins game with him. And I'm like, are you sure? Can we find an alternate form of entertainment? If they might be 14-0 by next Friday night is when he wants to go, or 0-14, I should say.
Well, that would be entertaining. I mean, if they're going for some kind of a record here. The good news is I try to find another example in local South Florida sports history. The Heat started 0-7 in 2003, 2004. In Dwayne Wade's rookie year, they were called the worst team in the history of basketball. They made it to the second round of the playoffs and nearly knocked off Indiana when they got there. Not going to happen for the Marlins, but I thought I would try to brighten everybody's day.
Yeah, and I did on that note, I did hear the stat that the Marlins are the first MLB team to start 0-7 after making the playoffs the previous year. That historically has never been done before. So they've already made history. Now, how much can they extend this?
Well, most teams don't fire their general manager after making the playoffs after forever, which is a whole nother topic. Perhaps we'll bring in some Marlins guys. In other news, Inter Miami, Messi did not play again last night. This seems to be a pattern of late. I noticed the price drop right before the match. That's typically an indication. So we'll see if he gets back in there. But at this point, a little bit frustrating. Again, follow our podcast, Messi and Company. Of course, lately it's just been company. And the Dolphins, no real news, except everybody is very excited about Diggs being traded away from Buffalo. Although, honestly, he didn't do anything the second half of the season. I actually think their defensive defections are more of an issue there. But there really are no excuses for the Dolphins not to win the division this year. All right, but let's get to it. We're going to talk about the Miami Heat. Last night, some good news. Alex, you want to mention how I was wrong about something again?
Yeah, so I'm listening to Five on the Floor yesterday, and you basically did a fantastic job of convincing me not to even pay attention to the Pacers and Nets game because you had already chalked that up as a Pacers win. Heat are still going to be what would have been a half game out of the 6th seed at that point. And so I paid zero attention to it. I was on a Netflix binge with my wife last night, and then I wake up this morning and I check the NBA standings. I'm like, wait, how are the Heat the 6th seed right now? Because that shouldn't have been the case had the Nets or the Pacers gotten a routine win against the Nets last night. So I guess thank you, Ethan, for allowing me to take the night off from following the NBA standings because I didn't think anything was going to drastically change there.
Well, I guess you should also thank me for basically jinxing the Pacers because that's kind of what I do. I'm trying to use my power for good. But I guess what I forgot is Indiana's not that good. See, that's the whole thing about this. Like, we can project victories, and again, the Nets are a train wreck, and they don't have their first round pick this year, and they've just been bad. But these teams in the East, other than Boston, are just not very good. I mean, Milwaukee is now what 15-15 in the 30 games with Doc. He's driving them into a ditch, which is not unexpected. Donovan Mitchell seems to be playing at about 50% for Cleveland, so they may be hooked by the time that the playoffs start. And the Knicks, of course, the big news today is that Knicks fans, and I am embarrassed to say I once was one of them because we didn't used to act like this during the days of Oakley, Starks, Mason, and the tough guy teams in Ewing that they used to have. They're blaming Jaime Jaquez for ending Julius Randle's season. A lot of this, Knicks Muse is an account that is particularly egregious about this kind of stuff. They think Bam is trying to hurt people, which is interesting. He's like the most popular guy in the league. But essentially, Jaquez took a charge on Randle. The Heat were down 17 with 4 minutes left. He tried to take a charge. Okay, Jalen Brunson is second in the league in charges taken. The Knicks, when Riley was there and into the Van de Gundy era, led the league in charges taken every year. And they're blaming Jaquez for trying to take a charge because their coach, Tom Thibodeau, does not take his players out. Mm-hmm. So 17, left them in. Randle gets hurt, waited 2 months, tried to get back, similar to kind of what Josh Richardson did for about 3 weeks for the Heat, and then finally had the shoulder surgery. So he's going to miss at least 4 or 5 months. The good news for the Knicks is Randle's a terrible postseason player. But the bad news, of course, is that it looked like they had turned a corner getting out of Nobi with Randle. They were 16-2 during a stretch. They were the best team during the month of January. And then this thing is all kind of falling apart. So, again, we put this in the context of the Heat, and we're going to bring on Alex Toledo, one of my co-hosts of Five on the Floor, because they're really well positioned right now, and they don't deserve to be. We talked about this last week. Like, this is falling into place for them, and they better not F it up. And I'm just going to go with this, okay? They've got Philadelphia, they've got Houston, which may be out of it by the time that they play them because Golden State has created some space there in terms of getting that last play-in spot. They get Dallas at home, and they got the game, of course, the critical game in Indiana. But then they get 2 against Toronto at the end of the season. Toronto's lost 14 in a row. They're not trying anymore.
They're trying to lose, if anything.
Right. So all Miami really has to do is get 3 of these next 5, with Indiana being one of those wins. And all the better if Philadelphia is one of those wins. Because if they can beat the Sixers tonight, they will be 2.5 up on the Sixers with a tiebreak. So Philadelphia will not pass them. And that means worst case scenario, if Miami wins tonight, they will end up in the 7. So at least they will host a play-in game, which, again, not the desired outcome. Really, they should get to 6 or 5 and let the cards play out from there. But at least it does not look like, if Miami wins tonight, that they're going to be any further down than 7.
Yeah, and even though, Joel Embiid, despite the fact that he was ruled out, he made that heroic return on Tuesday night and scored 24 points in 29 minutes. So I'm sure we can expect his best efforts as well tonight. The Heat are still a 1.5 favorites at home for this one. And so, with what you talk about with the road into the 6th seed, I guess the most Heat way, I can't even say that, like the most Miami way possible. It'd probably be more like a way the Dolphins would find a way to screw it up, would be to lose one of those games to Toronto, and that being, what would cost you the 6th seed. But I can't say the most Heat way possible because the Heat have been kind of the anti-South Florida franchise. They've been the ones that have been kind of carrying this town with consistency. But as far as not even deserving to be in this position, I get that, and we've talked about it a lot on this show, but some things that make me feel good right now. I mean, you guys talked about it the last couple days on Five on the Floor. Terry Rozier, the game he had on Tuesday night, and the way that he's really starting to fit and I think really find himself within this Heat offense, because I know that that's something that can take a while when you first arrive, especially as a point guard. But, seeing him just go off the other night. And then the other part of it is, people talk about Terry and what he did offensively and what the Heat were able to do with the buckets that they scored and the clutch threes the work that they did defensively on Jalen Brunson, I thought was super impressive to me because he hadn't had that cold of a game in a long time, and the Heat are what did that. And, when you talked about Knicks fans, whining about Jaime Jaquez, the other trademark I've noticed of Knicks fans, it's not just the whining. It's also the unreasonable amount of hype. And I'm not saying that Brunson doesn't deserve a certain amount of that, but the way that anytime you have someone who plays decently well or, pretty well in a Knicks uniform, it's the second coming, better than Kobe ever was, better than LeBron ever was. I mean, you thought this franchise would have learned something after Linsanity more than 10 years ago, but they never learn. And so, Jalen Brunson, I think, hits his first couple of shots last night. Knicks fans are thinking, we're going to win this game 120-60. This is going to be no problem. Brunson's going to go off for 45 points. The way the Heat adjusted was massive. And so, I'll say this, Ethan, the Knicks are a team I would definitely like to see at some point in the playoffs if it shakes out that way.
Yeah, and they might. It's possible. I think you'd like to see Cleveland too, and considering their current state. And I'll say this: much respect for Orlando and what they've accomplished this year. Magic's schedule down the stretch is tough. Look, the Bucks. They played the Bucks twice. We thought the Bucks wouldn't need those games. At this point, they might. And they just beat the Pelicans. Credit to them for that. But they've also still got to play Houston. They've got a difficult schedule down the stretch. They don't scare me. I just don't think that they're at the stage where they're ready to take that step. We saw it with Cleveland last year, typically young team in the playoffs, first time together. And Orlando doesn't even have a Mitchell-like player who's been there before. These guys are Franz, Paolo. This is a new group. Give credit to their guards. Suggs has been a lot better of late. Cole Anthony. It's a nice young team. But again, they feel like they're a piece or two away. I don't think Miami's afraid of them. They've beaten them a couple times. They beat them without Butler. Speaking of which, by the way, our guy Donut Dan pops in here and says, yes, Jimmy missed shoot around for personal reasons. He was riding a horse yesterday, so hopefully the horse didn't hurt him. But he's probable, and I'll just say this: he better play tonight. I mean, I don't want to deal with it. I just don't. I'm past the point of people, getting hyped about Jimmy playing in a big game and then he doesn't end up playing. The same kind of thing happened against Golden State. Again, I understand you're dealing with personal issues.
Yeah,
you deal with them, but we're at the stage. He needs to be playing basketball. Like for the last 7 games of the year, I know people are going to give me Herro doesn't play. Again, this is the Jimmy build. And he hasn't played against Philadelphia this year. By the way, Embiid hasn't played against Miami.
Yeah.
So it would be great to actually see the two of them on the floor together for a change. And, obviously for Miami to get a win in that circumstance. Now, Maxey and Harris also both questionable. Probably going to answer close to the game. I did hear Maxey was likely to play. Miami did a very good job on him last time. And kind of what you mentioned about Brunson is instructive here because we talked about Linsanity and then kind of what they did to Brunsanity. Although I think Brunson has more durability as an elite player.
I don't mean to compare him to Jeremy Lin. I'm strictly talking about the hype because I would take Jalen Brunson where Linsanity it was what it was.
Yeah, it's a New York thing. I mean, it's not just Knicks fans. Having grown up there as a Yankee fan and being talked into Hensley, Bam Bam Newlands, and Dan Pasqua and Ken Moss. Every prospect that the Yankees brought up was the next Mickey Mantle or Lou Gehrig. And that's just the way that they talk about it. But there is a comparison, and we could do whole shows on this. We probably already have. The Knicks are the Dolphins. I mean, that's really what they are. All their success was really in the early 70s. Both of those teams, that's where they won their championships. They both had competitive teams in the 80s around players who were great but never won the big one, Marino and Ewing. They both went through various pretty good teams in the 90s, couldn't get over the hump. And they both went through long playoff droughts. And then the fans always get hyped whenever something goes right, that this is finally the year. And it's never the year. It's not the year for the Knicks, and it's never the year for the Dolphins. Something will always go wrong, just like the entire Dolphins defense went out. By the way, there's a parallel here, too. Mike McDaniel left Bradley Chubb in the game too long for no reason in a loss. And Tom Thibodeau left Julius Randle in the game too long in a win. And those two injuries, in a sense, because the Dolphins already were without Phillips, who got hurt up in New York, by the way, or up in Jersey, those injuries essentially ended their season. So there we go. This comes in from Aaron Anders. Jimmy better play tonight. His PTO days have expired this season. Man, I run my own business. I don't give myself this much PTO. All right, we are going to mention the sponsor here. I think we have. Do we have Alex or do we not have Alex?
He's not in there yet. It's his trademark is always to be a couple minutes late. So
yeah, I know. Well, this is a live show, though. I can't just push it back like I do with 5 on the floor. All right, let's mention a great sponsor here, and then either we'll bring him in or we'll do our own thing here. I want to mention Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. Get $20 to play. BetterEdge.com. Again, this is legal sports betting. People are like, okay, you can bet legally in the state of Florida now. That's true, but you can't find the line you want. I mean, if you want to deal with the crappy lines, you can go with the other one. If you want to be in a marketplace and can find the line that you want, we recommend Better Edge. So go to BetterEdge.com, use the code 5RSN, enter our contest. We're really easy to beat. Again, use the code 5RSN, and you get $20 to play right away. I didn't take a look at what the Heat spread. You said it was 1.5 tonight.
Well, they have on. Let me. They have it on 2.5 on Better Edge. Let me refresh that to see if it's still
okay.
The case. Yep, minus 2.5.
But again, the great thing is you see down there, if you can see on the screen here, 9 open orders. So that means this is the suggested line. Okay. But you can find other spreads here. Okay. So as you keep scrolling down, some of these will pop up as the day goes on, but you can find other prices, other spreads. It'll tell you, and this will pick up closer to game time. And probably a lot of people are waiting to see whether Embiid plays and whether Jimmy plays. That throws a little bit of a wrench in the works there. So we'll see how that plays out. But all right, let's pivot back to Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. And again, we always mention our friends over at jerseys305.com. All right, Alex, let's touch on this briefly here again before if we're going to bring the other Alex in or not. You said you'd like to see the Knicks at some point here. But for the best path, who do you want in the first round? Let's say they get out of the play-in. It could be Milwaukee in the 3 now. Doc Rivers has blamed everyone from the towel boy to the bus driver. I mean, he literally threw the bus driver under the bus, which is hard to drive like that. So Doc's already done that. They've lost more games with him than they lost with Adrian Griffin prior, and they're actually paying 3 coaches right now, same number of coaches the Miami Heat have had since 1995. So you've got Milwaukee. Obviously, the Heat have seen them in the first round recently. You've got the potential of playing Orlando, I suppose. If Orlando gets in the 3, could even be a 2-7 matchup. They can get up as high as that. Cleveland, Miami's destroyed them a couple of times this year. It's one of the few good teams that they've beaten. And the Knicks, I guess. Those are your options. Who do you want to see?
I mean, my order of I'm fine with any of those 3, excluding Milwaukee being the 4th. I do not want to see Milwaukee in the first round, even though the Heat have had some history with getting it done there. But no, I mean, Cleveland, for the reason you stated, is probably my number 1. The matchup has favored Miami. Orlando would probably be my number 2 because, again, I can't take that team seriously as a playoff contender. I think they need to learn how to win in the postseason. They're still a piece or 2 away before I take them seriously. And then the Knicks are a close 3rd. But again, I wouldn't have a problem, Ethan, seeing any of those 3 in the first round. And I would handicap the Heat to win any of those 3 series, even if, they'd be on the road 4 out of 7 games for any of those. If those series would even go to 7 games, I would highly doubt that. But the Knicks would be in that conversation as well, Ethan. Knowing Randall, although he stinks up the joint in the postseason anyway, wouldn't being around, knowing that the Heat have answers for Jalen Brunson. And then, of course, Jimmy Butler would rise to the occasion. I would like to see any of those 3, but it's probably Cleveland number 1, Orlando number 2. The Knicks is a close 3rd.
See, there are Heat fans that want to see the Bucks. And I understand it to a degree. The Dame thing is still in everybody's mind, and you like to put them out. I see these tweet all the time that the Bucks got involved in grown man business. They put themselves where they should have, where the Heat were trying to get something done. Again, the Bucks were trying to do what they felt was the best deal for them. I will say this, and I've said this on Off the Floor, our Discord, and on 5 on the Floor. When the Bucks made that trade for Lillard, top Heat officials said to me they got worse. Now, I know that Heat fans are going to say, well, that's sour grapes because you didn't get him and all the rest of this. But there were legitimate reasons why they felt they got worse. And their feeling was that the Holiday trade, which came right after it, weakened them significantly defensively. And so that's basically, where they were at with it, that, defensively, they weren't going to be able to recover from that because Middleton has already diminished somewhat. and Brook has diminished to the point that Doc is not playing Brook down the stretch of games. He's playing Portis. And so they're not as good defensively as they were, whether Dame plays or not. But that backcourt of Dame and Malik Beasley is weak defensively. And so the Heat felt pretty good about that. What they didn't feel good about was Drew going to Boston. That's the part that pissed them off. Yep. But as far as the actual Milwaukee part of it, they thought the Bucks would be worse than they were last year. And then there were also questions about the coach. And I hate to say it. Well, I don't really hate to say it because I think Doc has been fooling people for a long time.
He's one of the biggest frauds in sports. Like because I remember like his reputation before the big three came together in Boston. They won that one championship. His reputation before was he's just a guy. Can he actually get the most out of that team? And then this weird thing happened. The Celtics win that championship, and all of a sudden, Doc Rivers just became someone who's beyond reproach. He became someone that, people talk about as if he's like Phil Jackson Jr. or something. Like, it was a weird thing that happened. And he's been kind of living off of that for the past 16, 17 years.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, everybody's been living off that for the last, you mentioned it's 16 years, yeah. Alex. Like, and yet, like, we have to deal with Kendrick Perkins on television as a result. Like, that championship had ramifications that nobody should have had to deal with. Like, Paul Pierce has a podcast. Okay, that should not happen. Kendrick Perkins is on television. KG is KG. Okay,
yeah,
and obviously Ray is claimed by Miami. But yeah, that whole thing and Doc. I mean, other than losing 3-1 leads with more talented squads, I'm not really sure what he's accomplished since. And it is partly because he talks to the media, and that is he's gotten this pass consistently. But I mentioned it. The Bucks are now tied into 3. They're paying 3 coaches, and you can say what you will about Bud, and there were issues with Bud, like not playing Giannis enough in the big games and all the rest of it. But he knew the team. He knew the team, and he did lift the team after taking over from Jason Kidd. So there are Heat fans that want to see them. I don't think that the Heat brass would be afraid of them. I just think it's an easier path to get Orlando in its first kind of foray or a beaten up Cleveland team that didn't look good in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, because like there's a couple different ways I look at it as a fan, right? You can say that, hey, like, why not take the quote unquote tougher path and knock Milwaukee out early? Then you're more battle tested for the rest of the playoffs if you get through that. But I look at it from the other side where, when you're talking about extending the run and giving yourself higher probabilities to get farther and farther, like, again, I'm not afraid of Milwaukee. That wouldn't be my preference for the first round. I'd like to get to the second round and maybe back to the Eastern Conference Finals if at all possible. So I can understand both sides of it, but I think it's kind of better for the organization and better for everybody if you extend that run as long as possible.
Is it fair to say if seeding was not an issue here, that with Embiid back and with the Heat getting reasonably healthy at this stage, that the 2 teams that could go to the finals other than Boston in the East would be Miami and Philadelphia, 2 teams that could end up in the play-in?
Yes, because, we have this same argument with, what's happened with NC State in March Madness, that it's not really always about the best teams. It's about the teams that get healthy and get hot at the right times, right? Where you have some teams that start well and they kind of go down the crapper after that. So yeah, I mean, and obviously this has been a thing with Jimmy and been a thing with the Heat for the last couple of years. It's about peaking at the right time. It's about peaking at the end of the year. And so, yeah, you could talk about those 2 teams being the ones who do that. So no, I'm totally with that if seeding was the thing and seeding exists to make the regular season feel theoretically important, right? I mean, there's 2 reasons why the regular season is important. Number 1 is seeding, and number 2 are the teams who aren't very good try to tank to get their seeding in the draft lottery. But other than that, yeah, it's really been about the teams that get hot at the right times. It's not about securing a 1 or a 2 seed.
Well, the NBA still has a problem. I mean, you mentioned it. The play-in has helped somewhat. It's kept some teams here in the mix. Yeah. And you talk about, look, obviously ESPN loves it because they're going to get their Golden State Lakers matchup most likely in a 9-10. By the way, the Lakers, I think, have won 5 more games on pace than they did last year. And last year they were the 4, and this year they're the 9, which just tells you about where the West is at. So, and look, obviously they want, like, the networks want Sacramento out. They want New Orleans out. Okay, they just want to feature. Honestly, they would probably want Minnesota and Oklahoma City out, and yet these are really good teams. By the way, Alex is not going to join us; he's having some mic issues, so we'll get with him another day. But when you look at the end of the season, the fact that you have Washington, Portland, Toronto, like Charlotte, Detroit, just clearly tanking at this stage. I don't know. I mean, they've tried the in-season tournament. They tried the 65 game, but they've tried all kinds of things to make the regular season more meaningful.
Would you call that a failure, that in-season tournament?
Yes.
Because when I went into it with an open mind, Ethan, because I'm a big soccer fan, and that's a common thing. We have Inter Miami playing in an in-season tournament. They do it in all the big European leagues. And, the Champions League is an in-season tournament. They have domestic ones as well. So I'm like, okay, I'll give this a shot. But that was like a tree falling in the woods, that in-season tournament. Like that was just a nothing thing.
Does anybody ever remember it was Indiana, LA at the end? I mean, I don't, these are, again, and both of those teams are probably going to end up in the play-in now. I mean, again, if the Heat beat Indiana, that's the most likely outcome for the Pacers. So look, they're going to tweak it. They'll still try to make the money off of it. But Adam Silver has a lot of issues to deal with. And he talked about the NBA All-Star game. They may not have an All-Star game next year. He talked about that. They may just do events like you see more of in the NHL now. And the in-season tournament, I don't think really played out the way that they wanted it to play out. And now we're at the end of the season. Everybody's talking about, well, the play-ins made things more meaningful. Yes, for some teams, but we're still seeing teams tanking. This comes in from Ron Baker. What's the status on Herro? I get the feeling we're going to get an alert that he's done for the season soon. I don't get the sense you're going to get that alert. I joked about that, not because I want bad for Tyler, but because it tends to be what happens with the Heat. But he has been ramping up his workouts. So I don't get that sense. They're not going to give away a whole lot of information. I also don't think they're going to break rhythm right now. And I think that's a big part of it. And you talk about throwing him into a game against Philadelphia at home. I don't know. He's not going to be a starter. I can't see it. We've talked about this a lot on Five on the Floor. Everybody, we have a couple people who are just like, "Are you hating on Tyler?" It's not hating on Tyler. I said he should start when he comes back. That was 20 games ago.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just too late. I mean, the season is ending in a couple of weeks. Duncan is rusty right now, but I would rather Duncan work off the rust with this lineup that we know he works with than force feed Tyler back in now and try to get rhythm with Terry. Has Terry passed Tyler as the third option or third best player on the team?
That's a great question. I think he has, right?
He plays.
Small sample size, but yeah, he plays small sample size, but he plays and Herro doesn't.
Right, and that's the thing, and I think that is the question going forward. And we touched on this on Five on the Floor. Is Tyler was excited about a Rozier backcourt because he says, I think that I'm going to get a little less attention with playing with Terry, which is good for him. But the backcourt is small, and they both are rhythm players, and it's tough sometimes to get that together. Now, the one good thing I will say here is that Terry has shot a lot off the catch of late, and that. In fact, almost all of his damage in the last game was off the catch. If that's the case, then you may not have to force Tyler to do as much of that, which he really doesn't want to do. And then maybe the two of them could play together. But I do think that the Rozier-Robinson backcourt is a better fit because of the way Duncan plays. Not because he's a better player than Tyler, but because of the way he plays. So I don't know if it matters who the third best player is. I just know they have Terry signed to a very good contract for the next 2 years. And if there's duplication with Tyler and Tyler can't stay on the court, then, that's going to be an issue. All right, Alex, I'll let you close here before we go. And again, we'll have our guy, Alex Toledo, on another day. He's just having some technical issues. They win tonight?
I'm saying they win tonight, Ethan. I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. Oh, I think they're going to win
Here we
tonight.
Go.
Yeah, I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid. I feel like for Embiid on Tuesday night playing 29 minutes, a little bit of an adrenaline rush. I think that with his health, it's going to come back down to earth a little bit tonight. Now, I'm assuming Jimmy plays, okay? Jimmy plays tonight, the Heat win.
That's the rough assumption these days.
Yeah.
It's not great that we're at this stage and we don't know from game to game, but I do think that they win tonight. I think that Spoelstra has found some things with this rotation now, and also again with the ball in Terry's hands and Terry's confidence level. Be prepared. Kyle Lowry's probably going to shoot more in this game than he shot in his final 15 games with the Heat, and I'll be curious to see what the reception is to him tonight. But I think even if Embiid plays, I kind of like Miami's chances. I think Embiid's going to be a little winded here in his second game back. And I feel like they can take advantage of him, get him in some pick and rolls and attack him. Okay, have Bam attack him. I don't care about the threes as much, but just attack him as much as he can. Lauren Lewis says Heat 2.5 points tonight. Easy money. Well played on Better Edge. I don't want to say easy money. I do like them to win. I feel like they would clear that number if they win. They're not a home underdog today. We've said they're 0-9 as a home underdog. They were favored against the Knicks, favored against the Sixers. See if they can close that out. All right, we appreciate everybody joining us. Jerseys305.com, betteredge.com. Use code 5RSN. We also mention our friends over at Water Cleanup. They'll be sponsoring our Tuesday shows. So come check it out and check out all of Donno's other work. He does great work on the Canes. We support all our Canes or all our Canes people here, no matter what. So check all that good stuff out. 5 on the floor tonight. Greg is hosting. Naveen Ganglani joining for the first time. We've got a Filipino correspondent now. Look at that. So we're worldwide. Have a good one, everyone.